I am here tonight with a very, very special guest, Sean. I just asked him his last name, how to pronounce it, and I forgot it. Sean Chandler. Did I get it
Yes.
right? Thank
I
you.
wouldn't
Thank
care
you.
if you mispronounced it because people call me Scene all the time. And so someone actually asking me how to pronounce my last name, that's what's different. I get so many odd pronunciations of my first name. So
Okay,
I
okay, that's
appreciate it.
fine. I get that with my last name too. I have a very Italian last name, but we are here tonight, and I was just envious because Sean's camera quality and his background looks so much better than mine tonight. I do not have my pink light up. I do not have my good camera up. I do have a new mic that has been messing up. So we'll just be envious because his backdrop he just looks so much better than me right now with the blue and the red across his face, and here I am just with like this pale beige background. But anyway, tonight we are going to be discussing the MCU because things happened. Like the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer came out. I did a community post asking people what they thought. I never got a chance to do my own thoughts on it. We had the Fantastic Four stuff, some things that I was upset about, some things that I think I'll be happy about. And basically, I just want to take tonight because Sean, I recognize him through his ranking of the MCU videos. And I thought that he's going to be a good person to talk to about the MCU going forward and if it has a future or not, because so many people are down on the MCU and they've had a lot of struggles lately. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But before we get started, Sean, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself. What is your YouTube channel all about if they don't know? And how did it get started? And just go from there.
Yeah, I've just always been someone that went to the internet to talk about movies, learn about movies. I put up my first movie review website back in 1998. Nobody read anything on it, but I put a website up and I just kind of always gone to the internet to do things like this. So whenever people started doing all of these YouTube channels talking about movies back 15, 13 years ago, whatever, I started watching all those channels and I went, I could do that. And for several years, I failed to do it and had all these false starts. And then July 2016, Lady Ghostbusters came out. Went to go see that one for a date night. And on a whim the next day, decided to post a movie review. So I'm the one person on planet Earth that can say, Lady Ghostbusters changed my life for the better.
That's
Now,
amazing.
right? Like, might not be a particularly good movie, but it is one of my favorite movies. Not that I like to watch it, but because it changed my life so much for the positive. But yeah, I just like to talk about movies. I kind of by chance turned out to be the ranking guy. I didn't set out to be the ranking guy. It's not like I sit around at home making lists all the time, but I tend to be the person that I started doing rankings of franchises pretty early on and then doubled down on that. And then that's where my channel grew. And that's anywhere I go, well, my first video is your Marvel ranking after this movie. I go, yeah, that's right. That's what everybody says. So, yeah, I've kind of rode the wave of momentum of phase 3 of the MCU to getting to do this full time. And so then it's been, frustrating the last few years as the quality has been less consistent,
Yeah.
which has made the comment section interesting as some people are like, yeah, finally you get it. And the other half are like, why did you turn on us? Marvel's just as good as ever.
Yeah, that's frustrating. I started just to give a little background for me. I just put off doing a YouTube thing for so long because I was so nervous about it. Even though like I felt like I could do that because in real life people would say, "Why aren't you just a film critic or something?" I want to be a filmmaker and I'm doing that on an indie level right now. But people were like, "Well, why don't you just share all your thoughts online or something?" And I didn't commit to it until I was 20 and like for years and I didn't have a lot of time to do it and I would just throw things up and then these last couple of years I really had to commit to it and it was basically last year that I did a couple videos. I did I had a plan because I had a couple videos that took off for me and I had a plan of I'm going to release this video which is actually called Why I Stopped Caring About the MCU, which was just talking about how I was feeling about it. And it just worked out because I did a review of the Marvels and that picked up. And then I did put this video that I've been working on for so long up the next day. And that really picked up. And then like later in December, and I just kept doing videos. I think you found me on one video that I did related to the Marvels that was just talking about demographics and stuff. And I did a video on Wish, which is my highest viewed video at 200,000 views. So I'm not anywhere on your level yet, but it's really been picking up for me lately. And I'm just continuing on with this stuff. But
Well, and that's like you said, I saw you on Twitter. You've interacted with me on Twitter going back, I don't know how long, but a
yeah,
good bit of time. And then, yeah, I started to see your videos started to pop up in my feed a little bit when some of those ones started to get traction. And that's where we, first had the interaction where I commented. And then I've had friends like DM me like, this video puts this really well, and it's one of your videos. So yeah, you had a really great last several months where you're starting to kind of find your footing and get some traction, which is very cool.
Yeah, hopefully for myself, I'm just hoping it keeps on because January and February, there's not as many movies about that out that people are really talking about. Other I saw Madam Web, and I actually thought that this was it was a fun movie, honestly. Like, was it a good movie? No, but I enjoyed like just how insane it was, and I told my followers that. So so yeah, that's where we both come from. And I'm so going forward on this channel, I'm just continuing talking about these reviews and the filmmaking and stuff. But I want to talk about the MCU because despite my video about why I stopped caring about the MCU, it was really me just kind of going through the history of like what the MCU meant to me and how right now I just don't feel hyped for anything. I don't even feel compelled to watch anything. Like I went to the Marvels so I could review it for my channel. I didn't go see it because I was really excited for it or interested in it. And so but I'm like an MCU fangirl. Like the MCU is huge for me. My brother who got me into the MCU, like he's a huge fan. He is not happy with anything that's coming out right now. But more importantly, there's
How old are you? If you could answer that, or is that something you can answer?
I'm going to be 25 in a week.
Yeah, and so you think the MCU, like this is your formative years. That's the dominant franchise, and they were really good. Like that shapes your love of fandom when that's so much of the popular culture, so much of what happens. Like it's literally important to like making you.
Yeah, exactly. That was very important to my formative years, especially as a teenager. I was 13 when the first Avengers came out, and so that was a lot of that I talked about in my video. And so it's like it's a little bit weird for me to be in this place where there's like nothing exciting to talk about in regards to superhero stuff. And I know I've done a lot of negative videos on it recently. It's because I care about it a lot.
Right.
And it's like I don't hate these projects. I miss being excited for it. But not to harp on this topic too long, but that's what we're going to talk about now is that we do have some projects coming up with the MCU. It seems like the Marvels was sort of like the big realization where people have been, I think that Doctor Strange, like the Eternals, a lot of people weren't interested in that. Doctor Strange 2, I think, was a big shift that year, and people really started to dislike these films. I know just for like the casual people, like me and my brother are like diehard Marvel fans. We will watch all this stuff, but I know even casual people who, you'd start a conversation like, hey, you seen the best Marvel trailer? And they'd always say yes. But, even just 3 years ago, I remember just trying to start those conversations again. And people would be like, no, I haven't watched Marvel in a while. And so, but now we do have some things coming up. It seems like the Marvels was the big realization, if it was, but there's been several movies that have made them realize, it would seem, that they do have a problem, that people aren't sticking with the MCU, that they're not as hyped for it as they were. And we've got some projects coming up that I think that they're really trying to reinvigorate interest. And the first one of those is Deadpool and Wolverine. And so full disclosure, I am not a Deadpool fan. However, I am a Wolverine fan. So this is a strange position for me to be in because I haven't seen either of the Deadpool movies. I'm not saying that they're bad or anything. I'm not making a comment on that. If you like if you like Deadpool, fine. I am not a Deadpool person, but I am a Wolverine person and an X-Men person. And so that's why I was invested in this trailer. And for the trailer, like I don't know, Sean, are you a big Deadpool fan? Like, what was your reaction to that trailer?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Deadpool movies. I just find them very entertaining, and having extremely irreverent comic book movies is fun. Ryan Reynolds is clever and just has great comedic timing. So it's just kind of great pairing of a character that's like that with the specific gifting of an actor from our current generation. So I'm a fan of the Deadpool movies. And the second one I think is a little bit messier, but not in a way that like made me less interested in the future of having Deadpool. But then of course there's all the concerns of what is a Deadpool movie being made by under the Disney banner when Mickey Mouse is the boss? Like, will that work? And they're saying it's rated R, but what will they be allowed to do? And then going multiverse is like, is it is that already too played out, or is that exactly why it will work, because they can make fun of all the stuff that's getting old and tired? And then will it lose the charm of Deadpool if it's too big and it's about all this other stuff? I've had many thoughts going into this trailer. One thought I wanted to say, adding on to what you said about how these movies are important to you, like my life changed because of MCU Phase 3. Like I was there opening weekend when Iron Man came out. I've been here since day one, but then my life was changed for the better. I was unemployed and in rehab when I started my YouTube channel, and riding the weight of Marvel made me get to have this dream job. These movies are really important to me. They mean a lot to me. I don't want to be negative. There's like people in the comments like, Sean, I remember when you used to not just hate on Marvel movies. Well, I don't currently just hate on Marvel movies. Praised Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 last year. Praised Loki. Was middle of the road on Echo, but like there's like the concept that I only hate things. It's nonsense, but there's like that thing in fandom where they like that toxic positivity where you're a fan, therefore you have to love everything. No, you don't. Anyway, so that's a rabbit trail.
Yeah, I think that if you're a fan, like you're actually more likely to be critical of something because you care about it so much. And I think like there was only sometimes with people where I think, okay, maybe something else is going on with your life, and like you're really taking things out on this more than it needs to be. But generally with fans, it's like you care about something, you want it to be good, you want to see it done right, you want to enjoy it, you want to share it with other people. And like I have the opposite problem with my channel. If I'm positive on something, people are like, "Why are you so positive on it?" It's probably because some of my videos that have picked up so much have been negative, and so it attracts more people with negative opinions. And then when I try to do something positive, they're like, "How dare you be so positive on this? What are you thinking?" So that's just something we have to deal with on the internet, like people wanting you to stay on their side. But with Deadpool and Wolverine, like I think that there is like definitely like I had mixed feelings when it was announced. Once again, by the way, I'm not a Deadpool fan just because I don't like that type of crude humor. And I watched clips of it, and I'm like, it's just not for me. So that's why I'm not really on board with Deadpool. But when Wolverine was announced, I kind of had mixed feelings about it because on the one hand, I felt like Logan was like the perfect send off for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and I didn't feel like they should really go back and taint that in any way. At the same time, it had been a while since I had heard something from the MCU that was like something that was going to hype up the fans, like Deadpool and Wolverine. It's like two popular characters are going to fight and team up or whatever.
And
like,
the actors have the bromance that they've had for years, and they're finally doing something together.
It definitely, it sounded like this was made for the fans and it's something that's going to excite them. And so going into this trailer, like, I'm glad it seems something, it's sort of like when I watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and I'm not saying that the movie is perfect or that it's the best thing ever made, but it was a classic MCU film. And you could see that with the box office. It started out a little slow, but then it really picked up because people saw it was classic MCU. So when I saw the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, it seemed like very classic MCU to me. My problem, though, just in terms of my hype levels, and it is probably just me because I was in it for Wolverine, but we already had it announced for a year now that it was going to be Wolverine was going to come back. We saw it set photos for so long of Hugh Jackman in costume on the set and fighting Wolverine. And I thought we were going to get more of that, but it just seemed lackluster to me because I'm like, but we've already seen so much of Wolverine from these set photos, and we only see him come up in a silhouette. And it's like, maybe it's a tease to someone who hasn't been following this stuff at all, but to the fans who've seen all this stuff, it feels like you gave us less than what we've already seen. And so that almost, like, I understand why people are looking forward to this, but that almost like just tempered my hype a bit because I mean, we'll get him in the future, but I was hoping to really get Wolverine in that trailer. Do you think that they should have showed more of him, or do you think that they're doing a good job with this marketing?
Well, it's a bit of a weird one because this is just a teaser trailer. If you detach this trailer from all the set leaks, it's a really good teaser trailer in the sense that it gives you a context for where things are taking place. It doesn't really tell you the main conflict, but it teases, oh, we're bringing him into the MCU. We're doing some multiverse. Oh, Wolverine's going to be in it. Cool. However, 9 months ago, we saw pictures of the two of them.
Yeah.
It's over months. We've been getting set leaks of Hugh Jackman dead on to his face, full costume. So the tease doesn't work.
Yeah,
It's like,
especially they were good high quality pictures of him too.
uh-huh.
And
And
so
I had like I said that in my reaction, like, this isn't the teaser itself is cut right. However, in the current context, there have been so many leaks, and we've seen cameos of characters, we've seen fights, we've seen so much more already that the tease just feels like way behind the curve.
yeah.
And people are like, whoa, whoa, yeah, yeah, but like normal people don't spend all their time on the internet tracking every set photo leak. Like, come on now. Ryan Reynolds shared the image to his 50 million Instagram followers.
Yeah,
This is,
absolutely.
we're not talking about a scenario of just nerds on Reddit. We're not just talking about us that are so obsessed that we started YouTube channels. This is to normies, 50 million normies. And for that matter, they announced it with a video that he's in it. Like, so it's just like felt so underwhelming to
Yeah,
at
it's
this point in time put this teaser out.
yeah, it's confirming it's not only just confirming what we already knew, but it's even giving us less than what we'd already seen
Mhm.
before, and I think that that is a problem.
Significantly less.
Yeah, I think that that's a problem because, if I and we'll talk about this, we'll expound upon it a little bit more, but I think that really the key to reinvigorating interest in the MCU, it starts with the fans, like the core fans and getting hyped around it because, for example, you can have a character, I'll just say Ant-Man. Maybe this is not the best example, but if you have a character that the mainstream isn't very familiar with, maybe Ant-Man is not a good example for this. Let me think. Okay, I've been talking about Gambit a lot. Gambit has a fan base, a following from comics. Let's say you were going to do a Gambit film. Well, maybe he's not really much in the public conscious much because he was never done in the Fox movies apart from Taylor Kitsch in X-Men Origins Wolverine, which he was barely in that movie. And he hasn't been used prominently since the 90s X-Men series, but you have a core fan base that could really hype that character up and a potential movie up. I'm just saying that as an example. And so, like, I think that that is very important, like, to get people talking. Like, I'm talking about those casual people that I know that just haven't been paying attention anymore. But if you get like a Deadpool movie and it's really, really getting hype from the core fan base, then that spreads, the talk spreads. And so I think it's very important to consider the core fan base and how important they are to getting this stuff, spreading word of mouth and all of that. But of course, marketing is one thing, but we also have to see if the movie itself turns out.
Right.
And like I have confidence that Deadpool and Wolverine will be a bit like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in that I'm not expecting it to be the greatest film ever made in the history of everything, but I'm expecting it to be good.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be what people want. And especially what gives me hope for it is that people are saying that Ryan Reynolds is essentially like controlling this whole thing. Like he's keeping the Disney executives away. Maybe that's just hype, but that it's basically his project.
Yeah.
And what really has been making me, what's really turned me off is how Disney's been running their business. And I used to be a huge Disney fan, but I'm very turned off to how they're using their business. With the Marvels, there was a lot of behind the scenes shenanigans. They kind of threw Nia DaCosta under the bus. They said, it was just because she didn't have enough supervision, and so that's why the movie fell apart.
Right.
And so when if it's Ryan,
I think that's the one on Twitter where people are like, all of these people are only hating on the Marvels because it stars women. It's like, no, most of us that are negative towards the Marvels were frustrated because they didn't let them try to make a good movie. This thing was just like microwaved in pre-production, and then they thought they could fix it with reshoots or something. And it feels like it was directed by committee, not by the person that directed Candyman. Like, there's no Candyman in this movie whatsoever.
yeah,
That's what we're mad about. It has nothing to do with a movie starring women. How dare they do that? What? We're in the 20s. No one cares about that anymore.
yeah. But that's what I was hearing, like from the Marvels, is Nia DaCosta said that sometimes she would show up to set and be like throw her hands up in the air. I don't even know what we're filming.
Yeah.
I don't even know what this is. And that's what has been sort of come out about the way that Disney has been functioning, is that they don't have any sort of good time management. There's too many people working on these films. Their budgets are bloated. There's not enough time given to the CGI artists. Just such bad management. But I'm a little bit like No Way Home. I still contend that part of the reason why it was such a different film is because Sony was involved in that, and it wasn't just Disney. And you have different studios, different people coming in to work on this. It feels a little silly to defend Sony after Morbius and Madam Web, and after that whole fiasco.
Sony, great studio. They've managed their projects wonderfully.
Yeah, but
what a weird studio. Like, you stop and think about it, just a mini rabbit trail. Like, there are different streams where you've got No Way Home, you've got Across the Spider-Verse, and then you have these horrible Spider-Man-less Spider-Man all under the Sony banner. And it's like, how are you doing all of these things at the same time with such wildly different quality?
Yeah, it's funny. I was in Madam Web, and my brother's a huge Spider-Man fan, and he was the only one who would possibly go with me. And like, I was laughing at moments. I know I'm getting off track, but when Madam Web drives an ambulance through the second story of a building and crashes into the bad guy, I just burst out laughing. And I turned to my brother when it was over, and I'm like, "That was funny." And he's like, "That felt like it was 4 hours long." And I'm like, "Didn't you think it was?" He's like, he was just bashing Sony all the way home. But it was
because of their great management, No Way Home was good.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know how No Way Home. Now that we're talking about it, I don't know how No Way Home was good, but anyway.
Like, that's what it really is crazy, because remember, Marvel Studios and Sony broke up just 2 years before the movie came out. They were not going to do a movie together. And then all sorts of quotes came out right before the movie came out where Tom Holland was like, "Yeah, we showed up to set and we were just fighting and fighting and fighting over the script in the finale." Like, it had its own issues where they had an incomplete script while they're making it, but it delivered what fans actually wanted.
Yeah,
right? I don't think the story for it's very good, but it doesn't matter because what I bought a ticket for, it delivers that, and it does a great job with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a messy script if you get into it. I still like to go back and watch it because it's so entertaining, though.
Right.
I do think that might be, and we have gotten way off track talking about this, because I was about to ask you what you think the quality of Deadpool and Wolverine will be. But let me just answer the super chat really quick. And if you guys, we have 82 people watching. If you guys have a question and you absolutely want us to talk about it, then just leave any amount of a super chat and we will get to it. So this question is, what do you guys think went wrong with Ant-Man 3? I would say it's just the same thing that's been wrong with every Marvel movie is, the management that they've been going on. They don't give any respect to the process of writing. I don't think that they have great writers working at Disney in general there. They just, the over-reliance on CGI, the abuse of the CGI worker has been coming out. And I just think that it's the same sort of problem infecting everyone. Would you agree with that, Sean?
First off, hey, Tony. I've met him in real life a couple times at MegaCon. So, hey, Tony, nice to see you in the chat. They literally have a name for it. They call it the Parliament, where they have this group of executives that are over everything. That because Kevin Feige couldn't do it all himself, they have like a parliament of people doing this. And because they're juggling too many balls, they're trying to do too much at the same time. So they're underdeveloping scripts in the script writing process. They're like microwaving the scripts at that point in time, and they don't know what they're going to do next. And so then they shoot the thing and they go, yeah, well, we can always just do a bunch of do rewrites, and we can always do reshoots last minute. And so it's just such a backwards way of making movies that it really started to fall apart. I don't know if you've read the book that they put out last fall on the.
Oh, I wasn't able to buy it.
It kind of goes, when you go through it and you see all this stuff that worked great with the first Iron Man, it created this scenario that set them up for eventual failure, because they had wild success with kind of this, we're always going to do reshoots. We want to be a little bit like quick on our feet and impromptu. They didn't have a completed script for that movie. And so that became part of how they did things. And it was very kind of reversed from how movies are normally made. But that's because the director, producer, and writer were all on the same page, working to make two movies, but not this whole universe. They just need to tell a great Iron Man story. But then they kept that same mindset and expanded it. So it's no longer one producer and one director. Now it's a whole parliament and teams of everything, a writer's room. And I mean, I think the quotes that came out about Doctor Strange 2 are so telling that there's 33 drafts of the script. Elizabeth Olsen, professional Elizabeth Olsen, not known for being difficult or just saying stupid things in interviews, is like, yeah, I stopped reading the scripts because I just knew they were going to change. Like she
Yeah.
said that flippantly. Haley Atwell was like, I filmed my scenes as Captain Carter. I did not know who was in the scene with me. I filmed scenes and said lines of dialogues about characters that are not in the movie. So I went to the theater to watch it to find out if Daniel Craig was in the film. And you go, what? How are you making a movie there? The actors don't know who they're playing a scene with. That's
Yeah.
so backwards. And that's the same thing with Ant-Man 3, where too many cooks are in the kitchen. I don't know if these writers are good or not because they're just hired guns. So they wrote something and then they're told to rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it. Like if you're asked to rewrite a script 33 times and you're not fired, you're doing the work that the producers want you to do, but the producers keep changing their mind.
Yeah.
And you go, that's just a bizarre way of doing things. I don't know if this guy sucks or not. I know the movie doesn't have a great script, or movie scripts for these movies don't have great scripts, but is that the writer's fault or is that the producers? And like, I know I've heard a couple things about some of these directors, how heartbroken they were over the movies that they had to put out because that is not the movie they set out to make. That's the movie they wanted to make. And the producers are the ones that have all of the power. That's why Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 is so generic and feels like it was directed by committee, because it was.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing from Disney, that it's like the least most creator friendly studio of them all, and that they if you get hired, you're basically there to just do whatever the producers want. You're not going to be able
Nia
to have
DaCosta openly stated that.
Yeah, there's no freedom of the creator. So yeah, it's impossible
except for
to
like
know.
a James Gunn. And then James Gunn puts out the one movie that's like, feels like the good old days.
Yeah, and then he bails for DC. So that's that. But with that, we're talking about that. But supposedly, this brings back to what I was going to talk about before
back to the question.
Yeah, before we really got off track, is that could Deadpool and Wolverine be an anomaly like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, because supposedly Ryan Reynolds has so much control over it? Do you think that's going to happen with this?
I'm optimistic for that reason. You have to think Disney loves money, and the first two Deadpool movies were, at the time they came out, two of the three highest grossing R-rated films of all time. I believe they are the highest grossing X-Men films, or they're way up there.
Yeah.
And so then Disney acquires Fox. They have acquired a hit franchise. You have to know that they want to milk that. They want to do everything with that, and they didn't rush it. And they took their time, and all along the way, Ryan Reynolds is, teasing me, having meetings at Disney, and he knows that character is his legacy.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to mess that up. I have some concerns in that I think Ryan Reynolds might have a little bit too much sway, in the sense that I think that's might have what hurt Deadpool 2 a little bit, is that they had a director that was pushing back against him in Tim Miller, and that balance is a little bit what made the first one a better film. And so he brings on his buddy that has done his last several movies that does what he wants. I have a little fears that maybe there's a little bit of that, but in general, I very much trust Ryan Reynolds to know what fans want and know what needs to be protected.
Yeah.
So then my fear is more the multiverse side to it. Is that that's the fear more so.
I want to talk about that, and I don't want to spend this whole thing talking about Deadpool, because I want to talk a bit about Fantastic Four as well. But I'm like both hyped and concerned about that, because I love the X-Men. At the same time, and I love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and I've kind of gotten over, like, if this is just going to be sort of a pocket universe where he comes back, I can deal with that,
right.
And just Logan lives in its own thing. We're going to have a lot of Fox actors come back, but my problem was I've never seen the Fox universe. This is my opinion. Never seen the Fox universe as a definitive X-Men, and it's been running since 2000. So for a long time, I'm like, I love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, but when are we going to be able to see somebody else do an interpretation of this character? When are we going to there were characters that I felt weren't done very well, like Rogue, for example. I didn't. That's my favorite character, but I didn't like what they did with her. And we actually haven't gotten a new. We've never gotten a new person playing her in live action. And so
Mhm.
I'm like, when are we going to let go of this old universe? And they're like, James Marsden has been confirmed to come back as Cyclops, but I'm like, this is a bit. I don't mind seeing any of these actors, but it also leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth because after No Way Home, Disney took the wrong lessons from that and like, oh, people just want cameos from characters, and that's what they did in Doctor Strange 2.
Mhm.
And it just became that's what they did in WandaVision, even with Evan Peters, and that was a disaster. But that's what frustrates me is like they've kind of run the whole cameo thing into the ground, and the whole everything is connected. The Raimi universe is connected, the Fox universe is connected, to the point where it's gotten not only old, but it's also kind of a turnoff to people because of how much it's been exploited. And
Mhm.
people are talking about multiverse as a bad, like an inherently bad
Right.
thing now, even though it's not. It's just but it's been used so badly, and so that's what makes me a bit nervous about this. Because if you watch, we both saw the Marvels, and they had that post credit scene with Beast, and he's one of the actors from the Fox universe, and I'm like, this is
Kelsey Grammer is Beast, everybody's favorite from doing that one as a cameo was like, of all the characters, of all the people, Beast? Kelsey Grammer? Really?
but it's like I'm ready. I'm personally, it's not just like I'm tired of the cameos and the key jangling, but I'm like, I'm ready to move on and get fresh actors for these characters. And apparently, people reminded me part of the reason they haven't done that is because I think that the contracts of the actors from the Fox universe have to expire within a certain amount of years, and then they can recast. So that's part of it. But that, like, I'm excited just to get some more Wolverine content, I guess. But at the same time, I'm like, how much of this is just going to be sort of beating the dead horse of the Fox universe? Because I'm like, we kind of let go of it. Like I've always seen Deadpool as kind of its own thing, but we let go of like
Yeah.
the Fox X-Men with Dark Phoenix, and it sort of went out with a whimper. And I'm like, and now we're doing another thing
New
that's going to be,
Mutants.
oh,
Don't
New
forget New
Mutants.
Mutants.
No, New Mutants.
That classic.
But what I'm saying is like we sort of already said goodbye to these
Mhm.
characters twice, with Logan, with New Mutants, with Dark Phoenix, and now they're saying, oh, this is another goodbye. So I'm like, how long are we going to keep saying goodbye to these characters before we get something
A
new?
and
So
also sort of Last Stand. Last
yeah,
Stand was that, like, we closed out the original trilogy of the classic run 18 years ago.
yeah,
I totally agree. And you think that this continuity, the first one came out when I graduated high school, which
hmm,
was over 20 years ago. And that, like, there was, where were the comics at over 20 years ago? Where was the comic book movie genre at? That was the beginning of the modern era of comic book movies. We were not thinking shared universe. We were not thinking that these things were going to last and you need to set it up to keep going on and on and on for 25 years. And so the X-Men franchise is well known for like being a total disaster on a continuity level because like these pieces don't really add up together. Obviously, X-Men Origins Wolverine is wacky as can be. And because it wasn't designed to have the longevity that has ended up having. And also that turns into, they do the First Class movies, which I think First Class is great, but you create a scenario where instead of working with all of your top characters from, a blank slate, you're trying to like figure out where in the continuity we can tell a story and squeeze something in and what characters can we use. And you end up like they do Phoenix for a second time, but with so many constraints on everything that once again they completely drop the ball somehow. And it's
yeah,
like they just start over.
yeah, that's
Do
what I
it
want.
fresh.
And then somebody, it's imaginative hobbyist in the comments is saying that supposedly, and this is be a good segue into Fantastic Four. So just closing out some Deadpool and Wolverine thoughts. Like I think that it'll be good,
Yeah.
but I don't expect it to be like it's not gonna like correct everything. It'll be sort of like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, where it's good. People, it'll probably make money, but it's not gonna like bring on the MCU hype train again, where you need to
Right.
see every film. And like you need two things. You need either a lot of consecutively good films for that to happen, or you need like when the Avengers came out, I don't know if you remember this, Sean, but I was 13 when the Avengers came out, and it was like an eruption. And the Avengers
Right.
was the first film that I saw, but it was an eruption. And that is really when the superhero stuff
Mhm.
changed and became like this amazing hype. And like, if you get a film, like, I'll just throw it out there, a new X-Men film, and it gets that eruption that the Avengers did, then that will bring people back. But I don't think Deadpool and Wolverine is going to correct everything. I think it's just going to be a decent film on its own. But as the
I think
imaginative,
the same
go
same
ahead.
oh, but like to that point, I don't think that Spider-Man No Way Home raised the excitement for the MCU because it was a great Spider-Man event. But like, how much did it affect the MCU? Like, how much did it like build out the story or where we're going with our multiverse lore? It wasn't. It was about Spider-Man, and that's what this feels like. It could be great, and people maybe sells $1 billion worth of tickets, but it doesn't feel like it's the Avengers was a movie, like you pointed out, that made people excited about the franchise.
Yeah,
And
and
that's not what I think this will do.
I think the way the Avengers did that is, once again, I can go back to my experiences with it, is there was so much of it where would give you like just a brief like chunks of the backstory and the characters. And the first at that time, the Avengers was my first Marvel film. I hadn't seen any of the other films, but it gave you just enough to understand who these characters were and bits of their lore and stuff. And so the Avengers made you excited of, oh, I want to see the next Iron Man film, not just the next Avengers film. I want to see the next Iron
Right.
Man film, the next Thor film, the next Captain America film, to see where these characters go. And so, once again, yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home was kind of an ending of sorts, and
Mhm.
Deadpool and Wolverine, we'll
Mhm.
see where the characters end up. But yeah, these are not films. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was an ending. So these aren't films that can really get you excited going forward.
For the
Um,
future.
yeah, so I just wanted to go back to the imaginative hobbyist about what he was talking about how this might not even be the end of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, because we're hearing about them coming back potentially for Secret Wars and having more cameos from like other universes for that, which I think that Disney really needs to rethink, because I think that they've exhausted people's hype for those cameos. I think Deadpool and Wolverine, the fans have a lot of goodwill for it, so I think it might work. But overall, I would say move away from that. But that needs me to segue
Yeah.
into Fantastic Four. And so overall on Deadpool, like, I'm not a Deadpool person, but from what I've seen, it seems like it's going to appeal to that fan base, and that I think that it'll be good. Fantastic Four, I have a few more misgivings about, and it's mainly due to the cast. Now, there's a lot of things we can talk about this film. How it appears from what we're hearing, it's going to be more stylized. Matt Shackman, who directed WandaVision, is going to be doing it. To be fair, WandaVision, there are definitely parts of that I like. I was very hyped about that, the sitcom style. A
Yeah.
lot of people were disappointed by the ending. I really like a lot in it, even though, and as I understand, like, the ending was really affected by COVID. But it would definitely, the directing was not a problem with that show, so that could be interesting for Fantastic Four. But my problem with the movie is the casting, and there was just so many rumors about this casting for so many months, and I wasn't like,
Years.
years, yeah, but I wasn't liking a lot of it. But then we got the casting, and it's like Ben Grimm, they cast an actor, and I forgot his name. I'm sorry. I had never heard of him before he got this role. Let me get this up here. Oh my gosh. It's not even coming up. Who plays Ben Grimm in the new movie? Eben Moss Bachrach. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. I've never heard of this actor before. And then there's Joseph Quinn, who's from Stranger Things, who's being Johnny Storm. There's Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, and then Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. Now, Vanessa Kirby, I'm fine with. Joseph Quinn does not give me Johnny Storm vibes at all, or the look. Some people have defended him, saying, "Look at this picture. He's going to be like 60s handsome. He's gonna work." I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about the Ben Grimm actor, so I don't really have an opinion on it. I do not like. I'm going to be flat out. I do not like the casting of Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. There's nothing about him that says Reed Richards to me. And I'm kind of tired of seeing Pedro Pascal everywhere. And I feel the reason why he was cast in the role is because they were really struggling with Reed Richards. There was rumors that Adam Driver was going to play the character, and then he dropped out. John Krasinski was cast as him in Doctor Strange 2, was treated horribly, and then just died. And so it felt like they just went like, here's an in-house Disney actor who's been typecast as a lot of dad characters lately. He's just going to be Reed Richards. And so that felt very lazy to me. I like the other people I could be won over, but like I'm just thinking to myself, like I don't know how I could be won over on Pedro Pascal. I don't know what you think about that, Sean. What do you think about this casting?
Yeah, the only one I have issue with is Pedro.
Hmm.
I think Vanessa Kirby, been a big fan of her ever since she popped up in Mission Impossible Fallout. And she's one of those names that's been on the short list for a while and was like, yeah, let's do this. I like Joseph Quinn. I think his ability to win over so many fans with so little screen time on Stranger Things on an established show, people go insane for Eddie Munson. I hosted a Stranger Things live event for Stranger Things Day, like a packed theater of diehard Stranger Things fans, and half the people in the room were dressed up as Eddie Munson. And this is like 60-year-old women to 5-year-old boys, everything in between, dressed up as Eddie Munson. People fell in love with him. I've been at these Comic Cons where like the photo area is right next to my stage. Every time they said his name to do photo ops, you just hear a wave of people screaming. And then when I was walking back to my hotel after one of my panels, and I just saw a girl like bawling, just crying. And my wife and I look over like, is she okay? And the mom's like, oh, she's just so happy. She just met Joseph Quinn. He touched her. Like those stories of like the person says, I'm never going to wash my hand. They touched my hand. It was that stuff over Joseph Quinn. And so he just has a magnetism to him. And I mean, Eddie Munson is a very 80s version of this big flamboyant, big personality, but I could see that energy being transferred to a Johnny Storm kind of thing. And with that level of magnetism, that's where the way people have connected to that one character, I could see him being to transfer it. But, and
Yeah,
then,
I just wanted to highlight this comment. Hollywood has fallen into the multiverse of Pedro Pascal. LOL, the Pedroverse. Yes. Well, I didn't know that about his magnetism. So I'm
oh
like,
yeah, they are insane for Eddie Munson, thus Joseph Quinn, and then the actor for The Thing. He's on the show The Bear. He was also actually Microchip on the Punisher TV show.
oh, okay.
But like he's just like a well-established actor that's has never had his breakout role until fairly recently with The Bear, getting a ton of chatter and buzz surrounding it. And so I actually only watched it last month because it won all these awards, and I was like, what is it? Let me check this one out. And it was really good. And so I can see him as kind of that Ben Grimm vibe to it. That's something very different from a Michael Chiklis, but I could see it. Pedro Pascal. Love Pedro Pascal. He has a lot of diversity in his performances, variety in what he can pull off. But when you think like what he's done really well is stoic, outdoorsy, rugged, like father figures that don't talk much. And then he's done these big kind of with Oberon on Game of Thrones. He was in that Nicolas Cage movie where he's like big and flashy and flamboyant. But where's the one where he played smart scientist in a lab, indoorsy, smart? Like even his big, flashy, flamboyant ones, even those are outdoorsy type roles.
Yeah.
And then you think about Reed Richards in a lab, staring at a computer screen, counting numbers, and you think that's not the vibe, the energy that he's given off.
Yeah.
And so I just don't see it. I've been like people like what's well, he's a great actor. Of course he can do it. Like great actor doesn't mean you're naturally inclined for every type of role, or like he feels to me like the guy that just says yes to everything. There was a quote that Matthew Vaughn did in a recent interview where he's talking about when he first cast Pedro for Kingsman 2, and Pedro was like, really, me? I'm the guy they always overlook. I never get cast for anything. Well, in the 5 years since then, he's the guy that gets all of the parts. He's in Game of Thrones, DC, Last of Us. Like he's got all of the things now. Star Wars, obviously. And so it just feels like the guy that just says yes to everything. Love the guy. Huge fan of these other things. I don't see Reed Richards. There's a reason he was on no one's fan cast, despite him being the guy that's in everything, because it's not obvious.
Yeah, and people always go back when you talk about comic book stuff. They always go back when Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker. That everyone hated it.
Gotten that comment so many times in the last 5 days.
But here's the problem:
everyone Heath Ledger. Everyone hated Ben Affleck. Everyone hated Michael Keaton.
There's two problems with that when you're saying about the Heath Ledger thing. Number one, what the reason why people were so resistant to Heath Ledger as the Joker was for his mainstream roles, he was mainly associated with doing romances, and so that's what they thought of.
Mhm,
But he had
mhm.
actually
He's
done
a
a lot
teen
of
heartthrob.
yeah, but he had done a lot of weird roles. It's just they were on an indie level. People weren't
Mhm.
familiar with them. So he actually made a lot of sense if you look at what he was actually doing leading up to that. It actually made sense for him to be the Joker. People just
Same
weren't
as
familiar
Robert
with his roles. Go ahead.
Robert Pattinson, same thing.
Yeah.
Everyone that opposed Robert Pattinson, they went Twilight Boy, and they hadn't seen any of the indie films that he did in the 10 years after Twilight. And if you opposed him based off of, I don't see the good fit, but that's fair. But if all you went was Twilight Boy is Batman now, you didn't see his actual filmography. You saw one role that just dominated the way that people perceived of him until he was in Tenet and Batman.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Joker is a role that you're gonna have to transform yourself no matter
Makeup,
who
yeah.
you are. And then Reed Richards isn't that. I would just
No.
expect someone to more fit into the type like that.
Mhm,
And that's why I
mhm.
feel like if we have Pedro Pascal being Reed Richards, then I know what I'm gonna get, and it's not gonna be Reed Richards. It's kind of and might have an unpopular opinion here, but it's kind of like when they were rumoring that Margot Robbie might play Sue Storm, and I'm frankly happier that we got Vanessa Kirby than her because Margot Robbie does play a lot of similar characters. I know I got shot in my comments for saying that. I'm like, but she does like, and when she was in Babylon, she was just really, really playing Harley Quinn a lot. It was very similar to that. And so I'm like, I feel like if we get her as Sue Storm, that I know what I'm getting, and I'm going to just see way too much of Margot Robbie in it, which is why I like Vanessa Kirby better. Even though she's not an A-lister or anything, because I can see her as the character. Like Pedro Pascal, I'm just having a really hard time seeing him as the character, and especially if they keep him with the same look that he's had, like the mustache. That's what we
Yeah.
saw. That's what we saw in like the promotional image. Maybe they'll change it. There's plenty of time to change, but I'm like, I'm just going to see Pedro Pascal in this role. But there's another thing that people have had a caveat about with this casting is the ages of the actors. And I thought, isn't it a little strange that you would cast like Pedro Pascal going into his 50s? Joseph Quinn is 30, I think, now. And I'm like, well, wouldn't you cast an actor who's early to mid 20s to be Johnny, or wouldn't you cast an actor who's at least 40 for Reed? Because if they intend for these characters to be, for them to be playing these characters for a while, assuming they're successful. But then somebody brought it up to me that Secret Wars is coming, that's supposedly going to reset everything, and they propose that maybe Marvel isn't as invested in the Fantastic Four to make it this long-term thing, and that they're just going to have their time and then go away when Secret Wars comes, and that's why they're not trying to cast really young or anything. What do you think about that? Do you think that this is a property that Disney and Marvel are really invested in?
It's hard to know when it's you don't the MCU is in such a weird place where we introduced Shang-Chi 2.5 years ago, and we don't know where we're going to see him again.
Or
And
if we're
we
going to see him again?
or will see him again? Moon Knight. Will we ever see him again? We Eternals. Will we ever find out the response on Earth to celestials popping up out of an ocean? And it's just over 2 years ago. We don't know when we're seeing any of these characters again. And we're only like, well, now we're going to add Blade, and then we're going to add Fantastic Four, and Deadpool's in here now, and then we're going to do Secret Wars. And you go, I don't understand what you're doing. Tying back to some of what we talked about before about that momentum for the universe, when you don't see the characters ever again, they do one thing and then maybe we'll see them 7 years from now. You don't have franchise momentum. You don't feel like we're building towards something. And that's what this feels like. We're doing one more thing that we're dropping in the middle of it. And even as you're saying that, of like, are they gonna, if they run this thing for 10 years, we're gonna have a 60-year-old Pedro playing Mr. Fantastic? Like, that doesn't seem real. And Johnny Storm by then is 40 years old. That doesn't feel right. So what are they? Are they just like doing this one-off movie? There's rumors of it being a period piece, and so would you just do this one story set in the past and then throw them in Secret Wars? That seems like an odd thing to do, in particular because they announced it as such a big deal. Like, we're finally bringing their first family over. And then they spend 6 years making the film, teasing it just for it to be a one-off.
Yeah, that
That feels
sounds
weird.
That sounds
But
really odd to me, and but I'm not but, like, just because they've cast, like not that any of these actors are old, it's just like, usually there's
for
been this
what you
sort
do
of
with a comic to carry a franchise, like you have to give some leeway to like how long can this person realistically play this? How
yeah,
long will they want to play this? So of
and
course you have to consider that.
especially because superhero roles are so physical, and so that's
Mhm,
why like like I don't and people their bodies change differently. Like some people start getting back problems in their late 50s and stuff.
mhm.
So
Wait,
yeah,
I mean, just stop and think about it. Pedro is older than all of our Chris's,
yeah.
older than ScarJo, and they were cast 15 years ago.
Yeah, and that's what really gives credence to the idea that it's gonna be a one-off or something, or if not a one-off, then I would say a one-off, but just something that they're not really invested in, and that's what kind of frustrates me, going forward, because that's like, I wanna be excited about Fantastic Four. I'm not like a Fantastic Four super fan, but I enjoy them
Sure.
and what they appear in, and they're kind of very like, the Marvel Universe, as it was in comics, got started because of the Fantastic Four. That was Stan Lee's first big success, and so they're kind of important, and also they've never been done right. We already had
Right.
this is probably the biggest thing for me. They did the first thing in the early 2000s with Fox Fantastic Four, and it didn't work out. And then they did Fant Four Stick very
Hey,
famously.
hey, you're leaving out Roger Corman's film from
Oh,
the
oh yeah.
early 90s.
But what I'm saying here is that they've never gotten the Fantastic Four started, unless you count The Incredibles, which was largely based off of Fantastic Four. Some people don't make that association, but so it's like, are we going to either are we going to do a film franchise with Fantastic Four again and have it fail for the third or the fourth time, depending how you count it, or are we just going to have it be a throwaway thing where we're not really invested in it? And maybe their thought process is Disney isn't very invested in. And the one thing I will say about it being a period piece is that one of the complaints that Marvel has got for years before people dropped off is that they don't have enough variety in them. And so making a
Mhm.
period piece might be a way for Disney to allow some more creativity with it. And maybe they're just using the Fantastic Four for an experiment, which is what's going on. But I'm still not sure about that going forward, because it starts to feel a little bit what happened with DC, where after Justice League failed, they had a Shazam movie and an Aquaman movie and a Joker alternate universe film. And they just started to do films that were connected and not connected at the same time. And they were just sort of throwing things out there to see what sticks. And, one of the things that did work very well about the MCU is you always felt like you were reading the next chapter of a book or watching
Mhm.
it, as you will. And you always felt like we were building to something. One of the big problems with the whole multiverse saga is that we haven't really known where we're going with any of this. It hasn't been really
Right.
clear, and that's what worries me, because even if like maybe like here's a positive thing, like both Wolverine and Deadpool and Fantastic Four, they're all things that interest the core fan base, because the Eternals was never a popular thing, Shang-Chi never a popular character, but Fantastic Four and Wolverine, like those are popular things with
Mhm.
fans. And so uh, definitely a lot of people were talking about that Fantastic Four casting. So that is a positive step in the right direction to go to things that have fans excited again. But when I look at it all together, I'm still questioning, like, where is all this leading to? What's this? Is
Right.
is is the Fantastic Four something that doesn't really matter because Secret Wars is going to come and retcon it or whatever? Are we actually retconning things? Is that Kang movie still going to happen? They haven't taken it away yet,
Mhm.
and so it's like it's all this stuff that's just feels like it's still a mess to me. And I was talking to somebody the other day about, like, because I knew that they have an interest in Fantastic Four, and I was saying that I didn't really like the casting of Pedro Pascal, and they were like, "Well, I don't care about Marvel anymore. They just disappoint me all the time," and so that's why I'm just feeling like, even as there's some things that I see that maybe are a tick in the right direction, I'm just thinking of the people who are a bit more casual, and I'm thinking that a
Mhm.
lot of this still looks really confusing, and a lot of this still is not really hitting the mark of getting people back on board.
Yeah, I mean, I had that conversation every time a new Marvel movie comes out. People message me like, "What do I need to watch to understand this film? I used to watch everything. I don't anymore. Feels like homework." Even some of my people that watch movies for a living, that they watched every single Marvel movie opening night, and then they were just, "I can't keep up with all these shows. I don't care about a lot of this stuff. They're adapting like there's both the sense in which there's the sameness of Marvel projects and they're doing things that are too niche in this weird way. Like the idea that someone as a Marvel fan wouldn't want to watch a legal comedy about a lady's love life in her 30s in her working
Yeah.
job. Like that's like a really big departure from what these
Yeah, and,
movies have historically been.
I just wanna insert this story, but, one of my sister's friends, like, she is not, like, paying attention. She's not a nerd in any way. She pays attention to this stuff as much as, like, the average person who just enjoys
Yeah.
Iron Man and stuff like that and just throws on a Marvel movie one night, but she saw this She-Hulk, and she's like, "Wow, that show is awful. What's happened to Marvel?" And I'm like, "This is what normal people are saying about
Yeah.
Marvel right now." I think, they just need to stop making Disney Plus shows that are supposed to be in Marvel continuity. If you wanna do an animated show or something, fine, but, like, here's one of the problems. We'll get to the super chat in just a second. Um, but, there's different types of people who watch a lot of TV and different types of people who watch movies, I've noticed. It's like, there's different people who only play video games and don't watch a lot of movies. Like, I'm a movie person. I don't watch a ton of TV, but I think that that's why it was really pushing people way too hard to do all these Disney Plus shows and say that they're continuity that you need to watch for context. I remember being in the theater for Ant-Man 3 and Loki came on at the end, and everyone was like, "What? Isn't he dead?" Because they
Yeah.
didn't watch the Loki show, and like there's confusion over WandaVision, and like barely anyone have watched those Disney Plus shows. Like I know people who were at my old work who are still watching Marvel in the movies, like Doctor Strange 2 and all that, but they would not watch the Disney Plus shows. And so I think but yet Disney, if you watch the Marvels, it's like you can't watch that without having any context of who Miss Marvel is. And that was like the lowest viewed a Disney Plus show. So
Yeah.
they really need to get rid of those shows.
Yeah. I mean, like you can understand what they were thinking of, like, okay, what if we could do this and we create a scenario where we have all these people that are so invested, so what, we'll get them to watch these shows, we'll put big production values. Like there's a logic to that makes sense, until you like start to like actually play it out and you go, a movie that made $1 billion sold like 100 million tickets. No TV show has anywhere close to 100 million viewers.
Yeah.
Like a hit TV show is a fraction of that. Streaming shows are a fraction of that fraction. And so you see some of these viewing numbers for these Disney Plus shows and like 1.8 million or like whatever, and some of them getting lower than that. And you're talking about 1% of the number of people that saw Captain Marvel watched Miss Marvel. These are numbers they're not entirely accurate. They're not complete numbers, but you're talking about less than 10%. And you made that homework. And all these people being like, well, Marvel's always been this way, that you need to watch other movies to understand them. It's like, there's a difference between you need to watch 2, maybe 3 movies in a year versus you need to sign up for a streaming service and watch a TV show you're not interested in. Like
Yeah,
all of the movies are big PG-13 blockbusters, 4-quadrant. They're big action. They're funny. All of them are that. And She-Hulk is this whole other thing. And Miss Marvel's this whole other thing. They're segmented for specific audiences.
and the fact that they expect you to, because they would end one Marvel show and then start a new one. So you essentially had to commit to it every week
Yeah.
and get no breathing room. I want to just break from it because we have a couple super chats. Super chat from Will. The MCU finally has a chance to get A-list characters. I guess it's referring to the X-Men, of course, and all of the Fantastic Four. Yet they're still prioritizing C-list characters over F4 and X-Men. Makes no sense. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that part of that had to do with a weird transition from moving on from the characters we knew about into like Doctor Strange, and they tried to do Shang-Chi and the Eternals. The Eternal just made no sense to do. Apparently, like Shang-Chi was made because Disney really, really wanted to have an Asian superhero. Which, by the way, if you want an Asian superhero, just do Jubilee from X-Men. But they took this character and they really wanted to appeal to China, but then China didn't like the film. They didn't like comments that the actor had made, and so that kind of shot Disney in the foot. But and they haven't even brought up the character since. So I don't even know if they're going to bring him back.
Yeah, it's like it ends with Wong having him walk through a portal, like, "Oh, I need you to check this out with me."
I don't know if we're ever going to
when are we ever find out what they were doing?
Yeah, we're never going to find out what they were doing. And
so weird.
I thought that Shang-Chi, I remember at the time I just said it was like it was mid, it was like in the middle. Like I didn't hate it, I didn't love it. Um but I he's not a character that's got anyone hyped up, and I'm not sure how many people even watched the film, especially since it came out during when COVID was recovering. But yeah, I think that they are trying to prioritize some of their A-listers now, but I'm not sure about how they're doing it. We have Zach, it will be 10 years since Fantastic Four when F4 comes out. Are audiences ready to give it another try? Oh, that's a good question. Do you think that people like mainstream audiences are even going to be interested after Fantastic Four has been associated with essentially like two non-starter franchises?
Mm-hmm. First up, hey Zach, we actually interacted on Twitter, not Freeze, fairly recently. Nice to see you in here. Um, I think that you have to think like Deadpool became this big gigantic hit after the movie version was universally hated in X-Men Origins Wolverine. And it's the same actor, but people went, "Oh, you're doing it right this time."
Yeah.
So I think there's that sense of people are pretty forgiving. People can realize the problem isn't the Fantastic Four. The problem was uh, Fox hired a guy that was a little bit unstable, and they cut his budget, and then he went crazy while they were filming the movie, and then they tried to fix it, but it was just a mess on every level. It was a train wreck. And then the Tim Story movies from 20 years ago, we were still figuring out comic book movies. It was real hit or miss. And we had the Raimi Spider-Man, we had the X-Men movies, and we had Batman Begins. But then you had Ghost Rider and you had Daredevil, and there was a lot of misses in there. And they were figuring it out. And so I think people know that. In 10 years in the history of movies, especially when you're talking about the target audience for a lot of these, where the high schooler, college age type, 10 years, that's that, like you're talking about, there were like very little elementary age kids, or that's a huge chunk of time. Or I mean, in your case, 10 years ago, you're in middle school.
Oh, I was
Now
I
you're
was
in your
still in
mid
high
20s or
school.
whatever. So, right, like we're like, this is a big 10 years is a long time. That's a lot of life for the target age for these types of movies.
Yeah, I think that that's the most compelling argument to me, that it's just been so long and so much of that has been forgotten. Like the only people who remember quote unquote Fant Four Stick is kind of internet movie nerds. But
Yeah. I mean, no one saw the movie.
I will disagree a little bit on Deadpool because he didn't have his own film like called Deadpool. He was just a part of a smaller film, and Deadpool for a long time had like this cult following of people who weren't even reading comics, just obsessed with the idea of this character. Fantastic Four doesn't have that, but I think the most compelling argument is they do have a fan base who's really interested in it, and it has been long enough. I'm just wondering, like, is Fantastic Four going to become the franchise that is doomed to die? Because it seems that they're taking a risk with this new one, and it seems that I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work. I'm still not sure that Marvel is back together, and they've got some sort of leftover films. Captain America 4 obviously had bad test screenings. They're reshooting the film. Thunderbolts, I'm so surprised that is still happening. Florence Pugh was recently on the red carpet for Dune, and they asked her about it, and she's like, I'm not sure if that's actually happening because they keep putting it off. I don't think that there's any interest in Thunderbolts, and right now they need to just move towards things, because at least like no one cares about Thunderbolts. I'll just say that, like, nobody is really bothered by that. Deadpool and Wolverine, Fantastic Four, whether people are positive or negative about it, there's a lot of passion there. People do care about these properties, and so I think that's the way to go, not these smaller ones. So
Well,
we've gone for
I think what my
but
issue with some of that is that they haven't given these smaller characters a chance to grow in popularity. Like Iron Man prior to 2008 was someone that comic book readers knew who they were, but wasn't known to the general public. But they put out a really good movie with just the perfect casting that it made him the star of the franchise, though he was not an A-list character to the general public until the MCU came around. And then these team up movies also like helped propel these movies that hadn't done as well do better. So the Winter Soldier makes dramatically more money than the first one. And then Iron Man 3 made dramatically more money than Iron Man 2. And Iron Man 2 had already been, and Iron Man 1 and 2 had both been big hits. But like, you think if they had done Thunderbolts to close out phase 4, so you introduce all of these side characters in movies in phase or excuse me, in 2001, 2002, and you close it out with the Thunderbolts, and it feels like, oh, we introduced those characters to then put them in this thing. And now we're seeing them again, we're seeing them interact, and so it builds momentum on those characters. Doing that movie in 2026, 4 years after Florence Pugh was in Black Widow, 4 years after Taskmaster was in Black Widow, 4 years after Red Guardian was in Black Widow. What?
Yeah,
Like,
and
what
part
are
of
you
it,
doing?
like, they never give us any, like, I would say with a movie like Shang-Chi, like, Iron Man was like, they thought it was gonna fail, but then it got out there and it was a big hit. Like, you needed a movie, like, I even think to the DCU, Man of Steel got a lot of polarizing responses. Iron Man was such a hit, like, you needed that to be the bench for the rest of the MCU. I don't think that Shang-Chi got that kind of response, but it's also true that there's just been so many new characters introduced. It's like the Disney Plus shows were like all about introducing you to generally to new characters, new status quos, and it's like you never have any breathing room for it. And it's like we get introduced to these new characters constantly, but like, what did you think you were going to do with these characters? Like,
No.
what, like, even if, let's say, like, there just doesn't seem to be like any plan of like where
Right.
these characters were actually going to
If
go.
if this all worked, if it was all well received and got the viewership on everything that they wanted and box office returns that they wanted, still, what was the plan?
Yeah, where
Were
were
we gonna
these
have like
characters?
were we gonna
Where were
get
these characters?
7 seasons of all these shows? Were they all gonna show up in movies? Like, what was your plan if this worked?
Yeah, it's like, were they all gonna show up in a movie together and everybody was gonna be invested in this? And I was wondering with that because like, were we gonna have like 10 Disney Plus shows with 7 seasons each? It just really, it was really, really confusing. It was almost like that their plan was, we're just gonna introduce a new character, don't care if it happens, but if whether people love it or hate it, then they'll still be subscribed to Disney Plus because there's a new character that they have to be introduced to in the next thing. That's kind of what they did, and it burned people out really. And I think that Disney Plus definitely was detrimental, if not to the mainstream audiences who didn't really seem to notice these shows, but to like the average MCU fan who was just really burnt out, just having to pay attention to all of this stuff and getting spurned. So we have gone for an hour. I usually said we would go for an hour. This has been a really, really great discussion, but I just want to wrap things up. Just so what do you think about the MCU going forward? Do you think that it is going to, like, I think that we're both of the agreement that as of now, we're not saying that it's fixed, that it's anywhere near there, but do you think that it's going to get, do you think that it's going to get even just slightly better for it with some of these properties that seem like they might have some interest in them? Or do you think it's going to stay the same, or do you think it's going to get a bit worse?
It's so tough to say because so much has happened since it was at its peak. And so you try to go, what was exactly the piece that broke it, and what does it take to fix that? And how much did each one play into it? So 2019 had this peak of popularity with Endgame, and then that fall they launched Disney Plus. The next year, Bob Iger leaves. Bob Chapek takes over. Bob Iger is known for being more creative friendly. Chapek is known for, I'm going to ask the money people what will work, and then I'm going to tell the creatives what to do. COVID happens, and then we roll out our Disney Plus strategy, and we roll out our phase 4, let's introduce all these characters strategy. That's so many different moving pieces all at the same time. So we jump forward a few years and we go, okay, well, this isn't working. There's a lack of direction. We put out too many projects, and so we're microwaving a lot of our scripts. Things aren't working as well as they used to. The quality is dropping dramatically. The overall momentum is dropping. And it's not that there aren't still good things in here, but the overall level is diminishing. And there used to be this assumption that you knew what you were going to get when you watched a Marvel project, and that's gone. You really don't know where it's going to be at. And so you get to now, and you look at the last year, the strikes happen. They have some breathing room to go, oh, crap, what did we just do? Like, what did we do over the last 2 years? And then they look at the footage for Captain America 4. They look at Daredevil, and they go, what are we doing? What is this crap? What is happening here? They fire Chapek. They bring Iger back. And so then you get the strikes end, and they say, hey, by the way, we're going to delay Captain America a year, and we're going to reshoot the whole movie. By the way, we're going to push back Daredevil a year. We fired all the writers and directors. We're hiring new writers. new directors, and we're reshooting pretty much the whole thing. So, and you have Bob Iger saying, we have oversaturated the market, we've watered down our brands. They're acknowledging the things that many of us have been saying. It was quantity over quality. Okay, that sounds good. You know there's a problem. You're seeing that, like, getting the writers of some TV show called Covert Affairs to write Daredevil season 4 or Daredevil Born Again and try and make it as different from the previous stuff is insane and was guaranteed to make everyone hate you. You realize that, and you went, okay, wait a minute. People want Daredevil season 4. Let's give them Daredevil season 4. But we haven't seen the results of any of this. We haven't seen, is it working? So you've got all these changes of Fantastic Four's coming, Daredevil's coming, Deadpool's coming. Bob Iger's saying we're returning to creatives. Kevin Feige's getting more control of his projects again. Okay, that's promising. I'm listening. I'm hopeful. But was that the issue? Is something just broken? Did they go too long? Is the magic just gone? I don't know. So I think they've made a lot of changes that could be the thing that gets it back on track. But we have to wait and see.
Yeah, we didn't get really a chance to talk about Daredevil. That got me the most excited to like see Daredevil, Foggy, and Karen back on set together after they weren't going to do that. So I'm a bit. I think I'm one step behind you. I think that we've gotten to the time of we acknowledge that there is a problem. I'm not sure how far we've gotten along into we're going to fix the problem, because you could say that a little bit with Daredevil, but it's like, but we have to see if that actually sticks the landing when it comes out, if it actually gets a fan base again after the Disney Plus shows have gotten so much criticism. And then once again with this Deadpool and Fantastic Four stuff, I'm really not sure about it. I'm not sure how it's going to fit going forward, talking about the big picture, not saying that we won't get something good here and there, but talking about the big picture, getting things on track. We have to see if they actually make good on it. Also, I was so hopeful for that Bob Iger quote about quantity over quality until someone pointed out to me that that's what he had said at a summit last year.
That's true.
Not last year, but the year before that. And I'm like, okay, dude, you say the right thing, but you have to actually show it. Like when's that going to happen?
Yeah. Well, and then the one about like Bob Iger returning. Bob Iger is also the person that Disney Plus was his baby.
Yeah.
So the first batch of Disney Plus messiness, a lot of that was coming from him.
Yeah.
And maybe you'd say that, like, WandaVision was one of the more interesting shows that kind of started right. And you go, okay. And then as you got further along, you start getting more into the Chapek transition. Maybe some was that, but the turnaround for TV shows and movies is years.
Yeah.
So there's years of the last of Iger stuff coming out. And a lot of that, those were some of the projects that weren't great. And then you start getting the Chapek era, and a lot of them weren't so great. So I don't know. Like I'm very nervous.
Yeah.
About a lot of it. But there's some acknowledgement. There's some degree of that this is not what it should be. And they've publicly said it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least it's a step in the right direction, because for a while there it was sort of pretending like the MCU is as great as ever, and it's like there's a lot of pullback on it. I said that yesterday with my X-Men 97. Like when I saw the X-Men 97 trailer at first, I think I tweeted you about this. I'm like, oh, I'm so hyped, and then I was like, wait, and I'm talking to other people about it, and they're like, but what about Disney's track record with this thing? And this was made before they made any sort of acknowledgement that they need to change. So I'm like, okay, I got to temper my expectations for this, because you got to remember, like I used to just be like hopes up for like Black Panther 2 and all this kind of stuff, and then they just get disappointed. So like I'm always rooting for the best for Marvel and stuff. I want to be excited for these types of films again, but it definitely we're in the early stages of just even acknowledging the problem, and so it's gonna be a while, I think, before we really see some major change. And then it's the question of if their changes work, if they're able to get things back on track anytime soon, which I think is possible, but I have to see it. But we've gone
that they did kind of take this year off. I mean, you have Deadpool, they have the one, but that's a pocket movie like we talked about.
Yeah.
So I think when they were just cranked out so much so fast, that they actually have a year where they're going, we've got to slow down.
Yeah, that is a good thing.
That's a pretty big deal from the ones with it. We got to throw things out there for the stockholders to get the stock prices up. And they went, no. we're going to do one, and we're going to try and fix some of this stuff.
Yeah, that is definitely a
It's
good
something.
thing. Just but unfortunately for Disney, Sony is the studio that's gonna put out 3 superhero films this year, and a lot of
We-
people are assuming
We'll
I
pick
got
up the slack.
yeah, I got a lot of people in my comments on Madam Web saying, "Well, this is what Disney does," and I'm like, "This movie isn't Disney though," but they're taking on some of the blame for Madam Web, it seems, because it's
Uh-huh.
Marvel, and people don't know that Sony has a portion of that. We have gone 14 minutes over. Thank you so much, Sean, for
Mhm.
coming on. I really, really appreciated hearing your thoughts on this. And obviously, you have a bigger following than me right now, but if you guys want to follow Sean's movie reviews and his ranking videos and all of that, go to Sean Chandler. Chandler talks about on YouTube. Thank you. And I hope that he will come on this channel again sometime in the future because I love having these conversations. But we will continue to talk about Madam Web. Someone mentioned we'll talk about Madam Web. We'll talk about Marvel. We'll talk about movies going forward. But thank you all for coming in to tuning in on this live stream.